Now that we are done with the article element and the section element, I also want to go and discuss here the aside element. So when we say aside element, this can be related to the main element, but it doesn't belong to the main flow. Let's say an explanation box or an advertisement. It defines related content that has a different placement than the main content. Usually, this is used for callouts, block quotes, and even definitions. So the aside element is often used for sidebars containing extra but relevant information. Now, if you're asking, sir, we had a discussion about it should not be inside of the main section here or the main element. Actually, I was wondering if that will be a problem, and I did my research about it. As I've told you in our introductory lessons, this will become a very common practice from where you will be looking into certain communities, such as the community of Stack Overflow, from where you can gather some answers if you have certain questions inside of your mind. Actually, it's a question inside of a mind. I actually tested out the aside element, and if it's inside of the main element, and then try to validate it inside of an HTML validator, and there was no error, there was no description telling me that the aside element should not be inside the main element. So I had this question inside of my mind: why was it explained in the documentation of the main element here? Let me just go and open that up here. It says here that the main element should be a unique document, content that is repeated across a set of documents or document sections, such as sidebars, navigation links, copyright information, site logos, and search forms shouldn't be included unless the search form is the main function of the page. So the question here that came into my mind: should I use the aside element inside of the main element or not? So if you have a question inside of your mind and you're not really sure on whether you should be using this or not, the common thing that you can do is to go and try to think of a way of a good phrase or paragraph for the question that's inside of your head. Let's say I did search this: should I use should I use the aside element inside of the main element? So when I did that, I was able to run through this search engine here, the list here that was provided by the Google search engine. It showed me the same question as you can see here. So it's really important that you go and try out using paraphrasing of your questions if ever you would want to gather certain answers coming from different resources, because sometimes it would be you having to need to rephrase some of the questions that you have inside of your mind, so that at least you will get the best answer that you think really explained it thoroughly. The question inside of your mind was answered by that answer that you got from the documentations or the communities from where developers are willingly helping out other developers. So in this example, we can see here that a question was asked 3 years or 11 months ago. So it was this question: should I have an aside element outside or inside of my main element? So it says here, let's say aside elements includes, oh, by the way, content such as reading suggestions, advertisements, or cross-sells. Is it semantically okay to have an aside outside of main? If yes, does it have any advantage over accessibility if I keep aside outside of main, such as skip to main content command? Last but not the least, I would like to know if there is any SEO impact if I include the aside tag outside or inside of the main element. So there are some answers here. So it says here that in HTML5, it's only defined that aside is related to the content around the aside element. In HTML 5.1, the definition became more specific, as it now says that aside is related to the content of the parenting section in content. So that means we can actually use it for together with the section. So following the newer definition, the aside element should be inside of the section element to which it is related. The main element is not a sectioning element. Elements like article, section, body, figure, etc. are. You can of course still place aside in main, but it will be related to the nearest sectioning element or parent of main. So based from the answers that are here, you can actually gather more information about how to properly use the aside element. And if you try to go through here, don't worry, I'll be leaving the link here in our reference transcript, so at least you can go and do some more reading. So if we go through another answer here, another answer here said that I am aware of none. I have aside outside the main element on my site and had an aside inside of the main element as well. And I have seen no difference in my ranking, given that search engines are generally opaque about specific bits like this. I would consider some A/B testing if you are concerned. I just really wanted to go and show you here an example of a workflow from where you might encounter doing the same thing that I'm doing right now here in our lesson in the aside element. It's you verifying on whether it will be great to use an aside element inside our project here, and making sure that it will still be used semantically, it will still be giving semantic meaning to our document. So I'm hoping that that is clear. So as I've said, the aside element here can be used as a sidebar. Usually you can put some extra information here, such as a block quote, or another information about the article here or the section that we have here. So the important thing here, guys, is that as said in the Stack Overflow, it really doesn't have that much of an effect because I actually tested it out in an HTML validator. So don't worry, I'll be teaching you on how to use an HTML validator after we have discussed some of the sectioning content that is included in this section of our course.